Hey everyone, we're back for Peak Human. This is the podcast where you go back and start at episode 1. So many great episodes. You can see my whole evolution of thinking. You can see all the other great guests that I've had on over the years. Please go back, start episode 1. Please share this with a friend. That's free. Share it with your family. Get them on board. Change their health. Give it a review on iTunes or any podcast app. Thank you so much. Now, today, we have Josh Trent, my pal here in Austin. Such a fun episode about the other things that I don't cover. I cover all the 5 pillars: sleep, food, movement, sun, and this is the last one. This is sort of stress, the whole mental side, breath work, everything else that's about your body and mental health and well-being, and the other things that aren't captured in the 4 other pillars. So this is a cool one. Josh Trent is the founder of Wellness Force Media, host of the Wellness and Wisdom podcast, and the creator of the Breath and Wellness program. Josh has spent the past 19 plus years as a trainer, researcher, and facilitator discovering the physical and emotional intelligence for humans to thrive in our modern world. Josh and Wellness Force Media's mission is to help humans heal mental, emotional, and physical health through podcasts, programs, and a global community that believes in optimizing our potential to live life well. He's such a good dude. We did the podcast at his home here in Austin. We did a sauna and a cold plunge at the end. I hope you enjoy this episode. I know you will. And now for Nose to Tail, the sponsor of this podcast, my company. This is how we support the local ranchers here in Texas, get the best regenerative meat out to you. This is how this all works. Check out our pre-made boxes on our site, nosetotale.org, or make your own box. You can customize it. You can add the primal ground beef. We have other primal ground products like bison and lamb as well. You can get those. Even chicken. We have the low PUFA chicken and pork. We have sausages. We have all kinds of stuff. We have bone broth. We have primal bone broth made with all the chicken feet and all those bits and pieces, plus all the great bones from the grass-fed, grass-finished, organic, regenerative, wild-crafted animals. This stuff is top of the line. It's all fed on a diversified diet, all out on pasture their whole life. All the best stuff. Get it at nosetotale.org. We're just getting our skin food back in stock tomorrow. We have soap back in stock as of today. The body care stuff is so good. Only stuff I use. No chemicals, no nothing. Just simple ingredients, just natural animal fats and a few other little things to make them smell good. We got the biltong. We're making another batch of our livervores, which is the dried meat stick made with beef liver. Best way to get liver on the go. 30% liver. Tastes great. Kids love it too. I love it. I keep taking it around to barbecues I go to and giving it to people here in Austin. Here's the biltong and here's the soap for people watching this on YouTube. If you're only listening, then you're going to have to go to nosetotale.org and check out all that we got going on there. We also have the seasonings, which I also use every day. Very clean stuff, no fillers, no sugar, just all the good seasonings. Freshly ground, made in small batches. You're going to love it. I seriously use it every day. So again, thanks everyone for listening. Go back to episode 1, start there, share with a friend, review it on iTunes, and enjoy this one with my pal, Josh Trent. All right, Josh, we have turned the tables. Now it's my turn to interview you. How's it going?
It's going amazing. I feel so happy to be here today, man. Thanks.
You know what? It was a great interview. I'm so glad to be at your house. We took quite a while to get this going. I think it's crazy that the only 2 days in Austin this year that were icy, we chose those 2 days to try to schedule it.
Yeah.
It was
nature.
Like the 2 icy days, the only days that it was icy. We're here on our 3rd attempt. It's cold outside, but it's warm in here with you.
Yeah.
You are warming the room.
Thank you.
No, I'm really happy to be here and that you had me on your show. And man, I've been looking forward to this for a while. We met each other at the Rome Ranch event. People would know as Force of Nature. They had a cool event. I love what they're doing. Regenerative Ag. There's room for all of us, even though they're my competitors for Nose to Tail. They're doing great things. So, it's great to meet you there. And I wanted to have you on the show because I talk about like my kind of 5 pillars of being human, right? And all my episodes have basically been on the other 4, except for the last one, which we're going to touch on. So first, I want people to get to know you a little bit. So why don't you give us the but a little thumbnail sketch of your life, how you got here.
The thumbnail is starting at a very young age where I was born to a family that did not necessarily focus on emotional, physical, mental, spiritual health. They did their best, right? And all parents do. But my contrast, my thumbnail came from me feeling a lot of what I didn't want to feel and not knowing what to do with it. So in other words, I didn't have the emotional intelligence. My mom had a health issue. She had a bipolar disease. My dad left home when we were pretty young. I think I was 4 months old. And so, to no surprise, man, I'm flash forward. I'm 21 years old. I'm like 280 pounds. I didn't know how to feel my emotions. I didn't know how to process my emotions. I didn't have intelligence. I didn't have wisdom. And I remember I was at this party drinking. You used to play like beer pong, the party cups. And I slammed the party cup down. I looked down and I had like this belly sticking out. And it was the first time I had really felt the presence of God. I was very angry at God for a long time. But I really felt like just despair at 21. And so I said, I don't know what I want to do, but there's more to life than this. And I slammed the party cup down and I ran home drunk for like 3 miles. And I got to my place where I was staying and I opened the computer and I think I typed in like, how do I be healthy? And that was 2001. And the next 2-3 years was like trial by fire. I lost 100 pounds. I got down to 175 and then gained 60 back and just had this roller coaster. All the while looking back, I can see now that it was an emotional and spiritual issue that I was trying to heal with my mind, with my intellect. And then I got so frustrated, I sold everything I owned, sold my truck, sold all my possessions, moved to Hawaii. And in Oahu, I started to feel feminine energy. I started to understand what feminine energy really was, because the ocean in Hawaii is so cooling and so powerful. And so it deserves respect, that it really brought me outside of the echo chamber that I was living in Southern California. And I found fitness out there, and I found this career of helping other people and being a fitness trainer for 10 years and having a lot of hours with clients. I think I trained I did the math one day. I was like, did I do like 10,000 plus hours with clients? Yes, I did. So a lot of hours understanding like how people move and what makes them healthy and what doesn't. And then really the deeper issue that I can say is, for me and for all people that are healing and helping others, when all I'm doing is focusing on shining a light on other people, the dark part of myself stays dark. Sometimes I have to turn that flashlight around and shine it on myself, or like hold a lantern instead, because the lantern shines on me too. And I think a lot of people are like, oh, breed positivity and breed love and help other people. But it's like, that's not always the path to be a fully integrated human being. An integrated being, mind, heart, and soul, or intellect, ego, heart, where we experience emotions, and soul. And so I can look back on that journey that I'm sharing with you with compassion, with understanding, not with judgment for myself, but really like I did the best that I could, just like my mom and dad did the best they could. And along the way, what I've gathered is the resources and the evidence that I'm loved and you're loved and all of us are loved. It just feels so challenging sometimes to be and to receive and to give that love. And that's what this journey has taught me the whole time is, how do I give love by being love? And then all the things that are in the way of that, how do I move those things out with grace? Breathwork is a great tool for doing that. Any kind of conscious movement is a great tool for doing that. Also, like having real conversations is a great way for moving energy. So there's so many different ways that I've, on my journey, gathered these tools and gathered this information. But when it really came down to it, in order for me to embody that information, I had to apply it. And that's been a concurrent theme in my whole journey of where I'm out of alignment, where can I gather wisdom and knowledge so that I will embody that knowledge by applying it. And that's where, lastly, the podcast came from. Wellness Force came in 2015 when I had committed spiritual suicide. I had left the fitness industry. I was so busy shining a light on other people that I didn't know that there was really dark parts of myself I wasn't seeing. And on a subconscious level, my soul, my body was like, no, you're done with fitness. And when I left fitness, I went to corporate America. So I went to corporate America and for like 2 years committed spiritual suicide. And in 2014, I got fired. And it was the most beautiful gift because as I drove home from being fired, there was like terror and liberation at the same time. And that's where the podcast was birthed from. Wellness Force was the previous podcast. And actually on 2/22/22, we just went through a death and rebirth process where now what I really want to learn and what I want to share is wellness and wisdom. So the podcast is Wellness Wisdom. And, hopefully we do a good job of sharing authentic, honest wisdom today here on the Peak Human.
I love it. Yeah, no, you have a great podcast, previously known as Wellness Force, big audience, great stuff, great guests. Oh, man, you've had some big names on people would recognize. Zach Bush was a great one. All the people I've had on too, like Rob Wolf, all the great people. I love that you have gone down a similar journey as me, and it's like led you, because I'm looking at your bookshelf right now, and I'm like, oh, I know that person. That person's great. That person's great.
Yep.
You got them all, but you've kind of settled in this more mind, body, wellness, emotional intelligence, breath work, stress. So that's what I was alluding to in the beginning, the stuff that I haven't gotten as much into. So I'm looking forward to you teaching me more today and after this, and the audience. So I'll just go through the quick stuff. So really, food is the first pillar for me. I talk about nutrition all the time. We got the movement. We got outdoors/sun. We have sleep. And then I'm kind of putting all the rest on your shoulders. That is your domain.
Okay.
So
how would you describe that category, all the rest? What is that?
It's sort of the emotional and stress, like stress falls on that. People always include, you have to have, anti-stress or do this with that. But it's like this amorphous thing. You can't just remove stress from your life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of in your modalities of actually how to do that, right?
Yes.
It's like there's modality, there's breath work, there's this, there's that. So it's combining stress with the emotional side, with anything. I don't know. Maybe you can describe it. It's all the things that are being human, and why say the blue zones. They say why these people live long. Well, they had community, sense of purpose. They had
connection to higher power.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm putting all of that stuff in your bucket. So maybe you can explain it better.
Sure. I would assume, and I haven't dove deep enough into your work, but people that are here on the podcast have, so they'll know, Josh, you're saying it wrong, or I really like how you're saying it. But I feel what you're really trying to get across is there is this spiritual, emotional, mental axis that exists in that fifth part of your fundamentals. And if we really look at the physical is a unit of its own. But what it seems like you're doing is you're really putting in the spiritual, the mental, and the emotional into that fifth lane, that fifth piece. And I think that's wise because all three of those things feed into each other, and the base where that is all held is the physical. So if the physical is pure, and if you're taking care of the physical with nutrition, then there's a conduit, there's a container, much like, on a wall, when you plug in a physical connection, because electricity, you have to have clean contacts. So if my body's clean, if I'm taking care of my nutrition, and if I'm solid from a physical perspective, well, then I'm going to be able to experience a healthy mind, and I'm going to be able to have the capacity to deal with my emotions. And I'm also going to have the spaciousness or the time to connect with spirituality and philosophy and God and the higher power that really runs and controls all things and loves all things. So I think in that fifth piece, what we're really looking at is we're looking at these layers of our connection to something bigger. And I'm not here to say that God is a dude with beard in the sky. That's not what I'm talking about. Because I don't believe in that. I don't think God has anything to do with our being in physical form. I don't think God has a penis or a vagina. I think God is an omnipresent energy that guides and loves all things. And I think that the more we can be in touch with that, the more it makes sense of all the intellectual wars we experience here on planet Earth. And I think also in this fifth lane that you talk about is our ability to experience emotions. We have on the wall here the chakra system and the chakras. And if you look at the heart chakra in the center, it's the green chakra. It's where we experience, it's a meridian line. It's a chakra system, however you want to describe it. These are energy centers in our body. So if you look at Western medicine, they call it energy. If you look at Chinese medicine, they call it qi. Or if you look at Sanskrit and everything from India, they call it, prana. But they're all saying the same thing. And that is, we all experience life in a very universal, fundamental way. And so when I'm experiencing anger, fear, joy, or grief, I have to actually be skilled enough to allow myself to experience those emotions, not push them down, not run away with them, not placate them, not pretend they're not there. There's a real masculine power for men to be able to feel their heart chakra and feel what's really going on with them. And there's a very feminine lens of power as well. And women tend to be better at this, honestly. Women tend to be better at expressing their heart chakra, at expressing their feelings. As men, we've had that pushed down for a long time. So on a high level, and we can go way deeper, but on a high level, this fifth lane that you talk about, it's really about, do I have a connection with something outside myself that makes sense of the struggles that I experience on earth? Can I give and receive and emote, energy and motion, right? That's emotion. Can I give and receive energy from my heart? Am I intelligent enough to do that? And then also, is my mind and the way that my mental faculty works able to see things without it controlling me? And that's a really big one, because a lot of times the mind becomes the master, and it's not supposed to be the master. The mind is a fucking servant. The mind is a servant of my soul. The mind is a servant of my heart. My heart and soul guide my mind, not the other way around. But we live in a world where it's flipped. So this fifth category you talk about is very potent.
It is. And you know what I was just thinking is how it's like physically manifests. Like people think of it, oh, it's just a spirituality, or it's just woo-woo, or this or that. Stress is physical. Like when I drive and I'm tense, I have physical pain.
Yes.
And when things are not going your way, you have physical manifestations. And I don't know, I guess I've just not been in touch with this enough. I haven't talked about it on the podcast. Maybe I haven't even addressed it in my life enough. But I just, hopefully this episode will wake people up. People can, maybe we can lead them places. I know you have breathwork classes, you have other things to do. People can just check out your episode, or we could even have other resources for them to go. But I just want to really focus on this whole side, because like, it is physical. It isn't just this loose woo-woo thing. It's like, tell me more.
Isn't it interesting that you use that phrase woo-woo? Because I think and feel the same thing. Let's start there, because I just experienced what a lot of people experience in real time. There's a key difference between our thoughts and our feelings, but they get really discombobulated because of what I believe, and Dan Party has a way of describing this, BJ Fogg has a way of describing this, many people out there in the world, Charles Duhigg, a lot of behavior change researchers describe what I'm about to describe in a different way. But I made this up, and I teach my students, and I use this for myself because I pulled from all the masters that I learned from, like that I've spoken for. But I describe it in my own way, and it's the BTFA axis: our beliefs, our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. Now, notice that they're all different. A belief is in its own lane. A thought is in its own lane. A feeling is in its own lane, and an action is in its own lane. So I have a belief in my life that I am a loving, kind, powerful man that has a desire for health, has a desire for wellness, and it's something that is important to myself and my family. That's a belief. So nobody's going to change that about me, because that is what I believe about myself. Right? And all of us have a certain number that we hit sometimes too. Like people have a glass ceiling. Like if I believe that I'm $1 million earner, then I'm $1 million earner. If I don't, and if I think, oh, that money's for rich people and money's bad, well, then that's my reality. So the B in the BTFA, and by the way, we're talking about the BTFA in this fifth area that you describe in your work. And it's this spiritual, mental, emotional axis where it's all the things that actually are a byproduct, and at the same time, they're a fuel source for us to have a physical body that's healthy. So this belief category in the BTFA loop is huge, because here, I'll just say it on a high level. We have a belief. That belief is reinforced by a thought. That thought is reinforced by a feeling, and that feeling is what creates the action. So I have a belief that I'm a loving, conscious, powerful man who cares about health and has a desire for health and wellness for myself and my family. And I can say that quickly because I've said that so many times to myself. That is the programming that I have for myself. So then that creates a thought of, okay, I wonder what someone with that belief would do right now. What would a loving, kind, powerful man that has a passion about health or wellness do for himself or his family? Okay, he would find the farmer's market on Saturday. He would buy the best Romano cheese, whatever it is. Like there's all these things that I do, but I get there because of this overarching loop that happens so much. I believe something about myself. It creates a thought. It creates a feeling of connection or happiness or disconnection sometimes. And then I take an action. But what happens in psychology, especially like old school psychology, is they only treat the action. They're never interested in getting way down as to what beliefs are actually driving the thought, driving the feeling, and driving the action. Look at the jails. All the jails are filled with criminals that are literally being abused because of their actions. And I get it. They've hurt other people. There's a time and a place to talk about that. But this BTFA loop is really what we're all experiencing at all times. And so if we can go way above that and have a conversation that's more calm about, okay, why can I get curious? Why did I do that thing? Why is my neck hurting from driving for 12 hours? Why is my body carrying more weight? Why do I continue to attract relationships into my life that give me the exact same result, yet with different people? What is the common denominator in all of these ailments? It's me. It's me. It's never other people, actually, ever. And I know that sounds like woo-woo, to go back to what you mentioned in the beginning.
Yeah.
I think the reason why we use that word woo-woo is because that's easy for the mind to discredit. It's easy for the intellect to not have to understand. And I do it too, right? It's not a bad thing. Like sometimes shit is woo-woo. Like when there's a dude wearing a purple crystal at the top of a mountain talking about his aura, like that's a little much for some people.
Yeah.
And me sometimes too. But this BTFA loop is huge. And I think the more that we can have a rational, still heart-based conversation about that, then it leads to a totally more, I guess you could say, nuanced and intelligent conversation. And that conversation is, can I look at my life like a kaleidoscope? Because when I look at my life like a kaleidoscope, I start seeing things in a radical new way. But I'll pause there because the kaleidoscope is pretty advanced.
Well, I was going to ask, like, what is that? I know what a kaleidoscope is, but what does that mean to you?
Well, when you're a child, and I say this with the pre-frame of this awesome conversation we're having, because if you understand your beliefs, your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions, and you can journal on that, and you can work on that, and you can self-reflect on that, that fifth category that you talk about in your work, it's going to be a lot more fruitful. You're going to have a lot more joy in your life. You're going to have a lot more things go your way. But if you want to go even deeper and you want to experience life from a really vital, really rich place, first of all, you have to know how to move healthy, eat healthy. You also know you have to know how to breathe. Because when you breathe properly, your body can let go of a lot of emotions that it's holding on to. Like, for example, right now, if we just take a deep breath in through our nose and we fill our belly and then we breathe out through our mouth, everybody can do it with us. Just from one breath, it can shift your state. It can change the pace of a conversation. And so the breath is this access point to the BTFA, which is kind of a lot more logical, a lot more intellectual, to the more advanced archetype, the more advanced example. Not an archetype, it's a more advanced example of what I think is really going on at all times. And this brings communion to three lenses. So when I look at life through a lens, like a child in a kaleidoscope, right? I'm looking through a kaleidoscope, I'm seeing the things in there. In our society, we only have one lens, and that is like the mind. What am I seeing with my mind? What's going on? What research do I need? And this is a good thing. And I'm not here to demonize the mind, but the mind's job is to give and receive information and to keep you safe. That's the mind's job. Give and receive information and keep you safe. Now, of course, there's a lot more things that it does, but that is only one lens in this kaleidoscope. And really what I have been Feeling, and what I know this to be, is this is emotional intelligence inventory. I call it EI2 squared. So it's like an E and an I and a little 2, right? Because that's the power of 2. So we have emotional intelligence, we have emotional inventory. You stack a 2 on top of that, and now you're looking through the lens of the kaleidoscope. You're seeing life through your mind and your intellect. You're seeing life through your heart chakra, where you give and experience and feel emotions. And then lastly, you're feeling life through that third lens of the kaleidoscope, and that is your connection to God, your connection to higher power, the honoring of the mystery in this world. So this concept is more woo-woo for a lot of people. People can understand the BTFA loop. That's easy because that's built for the mind. But the evolution of BTFA for me has been really teaching myself and all the students and all the people that follow the work is like, all right, now that you know that your mind is not out to get you, it's there to serve you. How can you use the wisdom of your feelings, of what you're experiencing in your heart? And how can you get the ultimate wisdom of what does your soul say? So if you can go ego, mind, intellect, heart, feelings, emotions, and lastly, soul, that's where you get the wisdom. Then you'll find a beautiful experience as you go through this 5th phase of your work, right? This mental, emotional, spiritual axis. And there's a lot more there, but that's the progression from the BTFA logic to the kaleidoscope or the EI2.
Wow. Yeah, we'll have to dive into each piece of this. So I want to latch onto the breath work because we did some breath work before the first podcast we did, and I felt different. I mean, it's pretty crazy. It feels like you're on something.
Yeah.
And we had a Sapien Tribe event where we had some breath work, and it was amazing. People had a great experience. You know, we lied down. It's really cool. It's something that I haven't got into as much as I'd like to, but we should start there because, again, I actually hate words like woo-woo because it's kind of like this thing where we just it's trying to discredit someone. It's almost like, oh, you're anti-vaxxer, or you're a, you know what I mean?
I know.
Like you're a quack. It's
I
like,
know.
no. It's like I use natural medicine. No, you're a quack. You know, it's like ways to shut people down. So I don't want to say woo-woo, but maybe some people listening, because I am very science-based, that this may sound woo-woo to some people. So I don't know if we have a better term for it, but all I'm going to say is there are physical changes that happens, especially with breath work, that you can feel. There's science behind it too. You know, what was the one? It's like if you can take like 8 deep breaths before you take your blood pressure, you can lower your blood pressure by X amount of points.
Yeah. I mean, Wim Hof really was, in my opinion, the man that made breath mainstream.
Yeah.
But if you go way back, it's Leonard Orr who really brought breath work from the Orient, from the East over here to the West. Leonard Orr passed away, and then Leonard taught Dan Brulé at Breath Mastery, and there's a lot of teachers in the breath work world. But breath is an art and a science. You know, breath is very scientific, very logical, and it's also radically spiritual, which is why I fucking love it the most, because it's got everything that I like. It's got science and logical, and it's got spirituality and honoring the mystery. So I'm with you. Like this reductionized word, I don't know what the etymology of woo-woo is. I think it's kind of like a new world term. But really what I think woo-woo is it's an honoring of the mystery that we don't quite understand. And we can't always put words to the honoring of this mystery that we experience. When you hold a child in your arms, that's the most hardcore woo-woo you will ever experience. But we think it's okay because we say, oh yeah, well that's okay to love your child in that way. Well, isn't it okay to love your life and to dance naked on a mountain? Is that too woo-woo? Right? Like who decides what level of woo is okay and what isn't? That goes back to the whole belief column. So that's the first thing I want to say. But when it comes to the breath work, like really to pull the lever on our breath is to access this bridge between knowing and doing, or higher power and ourselves. Think of it, Brian, it's the only autonomic or automatic lever we can pull. Nothing else. You know, you can't sit there and force your body to digest its food faster. You can't make your skin grow faster, right? You can't do a lot of things that your autonomic or automatic nervous system is doing, but you can pull the emergency brake. You can pull that lever of your breath. And that is what makes it so potent for us to connect these two worlds, whether it's the woo and the logical, you know, the mysterious or the mundane. Breath connects us. So when we're connected through our breath, we really have an access point to check in, to see, okay, how am I doing with myself? How am I doing with my kids? How am I doing with my wife, my partner? How am I doing with my work? But if we're going through life and we're just holding our breath, which is what so many people do, and I know we'll get into this later, the way that we're trained to not breathe, the way that even when you and I hope you don't mind me sharing, like when we did our breath work together and I was cueing you properly on the ground, you're an upper chest breather. And that's not wrong. It's just not optimal. So we're meant to breathe like a bellow. We're meant to breathe like an animal in nature. You look at a zebra or a tiger or a gazelle. If you watch them breathe after they've been chased, they're relaxing, but they breathe like a bellow. They breathe horizontally. These animals don't breathe vertically. They don't even know how to do that. But we have been trained to do that, so we can talk about that in a moment. That's really where we are, Brian, in this conversation. Is breath is the only autonomic lever we can pull that modulates our stress. And it's in the modulation of that stress that dictates the quality of our life. It's truly one of the biggest levers we can pull for our nervous system.
It's so real. And physical changes can happen, and it can change your blood pressure. It can change your stress response. It can change your whole attitude towards the situation. Like, this is just something I've never gotten into or thought about much. And I've just been really interested in it now. So can you take us through something? Like, where do we even start? Because there's.
Well, the best place to start is exactly where you are. I mean, really, like, I don't care if you have done a bunch of meditation or you've been an experienced Vipassana meditator, or maybe you've done a lot of hard things. Maybe you've even done breath work before. It's not the degree of the intensity of the breath work that you do. It's the consistency. The consistency of your breath and your awareness for breath awareness is actually the thing that's going to give you the most return. So the best place where you can start, number one, is actual breathing technique. We have some great techniques in the program. It's Breathe, Breath, and Wellness, and we teach you how to actually breathe through your diaphragm, through your stomach, instead of through your scalenes, your sternocleidomastoid. A lot of people are upper chest, upper cross as well. So that's the first thing, is like, okay, what is the technique that's going to allow you to use these musculatures in your body that'll actually give you optimal breathing patterns? That's the number one. Then from there, it's posture, making sure that if you are laying down, that your posture is in a certain way. If you are seated or standing, that your posture is in a certain way. And then after that, it's actually strengthening and challenging the muscles. There's a lot of tools you can use for breath, either on the inhale and exhale, that'll give you stronger respiration. Your serratus muscles are really, really important. So is your TVA, your transverse abdominis. And really all the center core and the pelvic floor musculature is really important when you look at breathing. So those are the places where you start. And the best cue that even a child would understand, if let's say we want to do 6 deep breaths right now, you would plant your feet firmly on the ground. You would stack your hip, your spine, and your head in a line. And you would have a string on the top of your head that's being pulled to the ceiling. So imagine that your head's being pulled to the top of the ceiling. And you would just simply take your hands and put them on your stomach. And just feel yourself breathe naturally for 1 breath. Now what I want you to do is, when you breathe in through your nose, I want you to fill an imaginary balloon behind your belly. So breathe in through your nose and let your belly go out. In through the nose, belly out. Now right there, if you're with us, you should have noticed that when you took a breath in through your nose, your belly extended. There's a balloon behind your belly button, and that balloon filled. Now when you let go, pull your belly to your spine. So you should have travel that looks like...
It's almost counterintuitive. I think that's what was getting me when we first showed up today.
Yeah.
I think people mainly do the opposite.
They do. But here's why. It's a learned stress response because of too much capital T or lowercase t trauma. And our society is a pretty traumatic place for a lot of people. So whether it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse. I mean, there's lots of ways. There's lots of ways that we can experience the capital T trauma, the things that really teach us to breathe up instead of breathe out. But there's also lowercase t trauma. There's a lot of trauma that happens for us that is more cumulative over time, like parents that don't support their children, or parents that simply don't know how to be good parents to their children. That child grows up with some residual trauma of that. So it's our job as grown adults to not blame our parents and to actually do our work and make sure that we're unwinding and unpacking that trauma. And a lot of times what happens, if you look at Bessel van der Kolk's work, or if you look at Peter Levine's work, or if you look at anyone about somatics or somatic energy or just breathwork and somatics in general, what you're going to find is that all of these things start with breathing. All of these healing things or healing modalities, they all in some way are using the art and the science of the breath. So let's go back to it. We have our feet on the ground. We're stacked with our posture. We already practiced those breaths together. Now what I want us to do is we're going to do this 6 times in a row. But I want you to imagine, if you're watching us on YouTube, wherever you're watching us, every time you breathe in through your nose, fill a balloon behind your belly. Every time you exhale, pull that spine and your belly close together. So it would look and feel just like this. Belly to spine. Inhale through your nose. Fill the belly and then let it go. 4 more. Now exhale with an audible sound. And just return to your normal breathing. We did a lot there, even though it seems like we didn't. Probably y'all feel different right now just from what we did, because there was a auditory response where we actually were using the vocal cords to cue ourselves into parasympathetic, where we were using those full circular breaths to physically expand and compress our diaphragm, which dovetails into the vagus nerve and the vagus nerve endings that go right to our amygdala, which is the fear center of our brain. So when we were doing that full inhale through the nose, fill the balloon, and full exhale, belly button to spine, we are literally and figuratively activating what's called vagal tone. And when you activate vagal tone, you are cueing your body for deeper relaxation. You are cueing your body that it's okay to rest and digest. You are leaving the fear base of what a lot of people experience when they're kids and adults, and that is constant drip of stress from finances, constant drip of stress from arguments, constant drip of stress from living in an economically downturned neighborhood, constant drip of stress from fill it in the blank. All day long, all year long, people experience, as children and adults, chronic stress. We don't just live in a world of stress. Brian, you and I live in a world that is not only propagating and perpetuating chronic stress, but it's then using their propagation and their perpetuation of the stress that they've created. And when I say they, I mean society, insurance, pharma, medical, and ag. All that combined, they're all in bed together. They're all laced fingers together, and they all know exactly what they're doing. And so at the end of the road, we have this society of people that are traumatized, that don't know how to breathe properly, that are in a constant state of fight or flight and sympathetic stress. And so what we just did there was like the tip of the iceberg for us to use breath to pull that lever to come back to peace for a moment. And then, of course, you start with the posture, the breathing musculature, and the technique. The next thing you know, you're doing a 3-week program where at the end of the 3-week program, you finally told your wife that you loved her. And it's been years. Or, someone will write to me. We have a couple testimonials on our page where a woman said that she literally was able to feel relaxation in a way where she hadn't felt it for years because of her own anxiety. Or a man on our testimonials page where he was able to take a courageous act in his life that he wasn't able to before. Because the power of the breath does 2 things. It gives us healing and catharsis and relaxation, but it also brings us courage. It also allows us to have greater awareness of that courage even existing in the first place. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on, man.
Well, I'm thinking about times when I've done it, because I haven't ever studied breathwork, but I know that I like that you said pull the brake, because if I'm in a stressful situation, I know, I guess it's in popular culture, it's like stop and take a breath. And when I've done that, it actually does change the situation. So yeah. How does that work? And I guess I want to know more how the past trauma really makes people breathe differently. That sounds like that's not very connected.
It's incredibly connected. So if you look at, why do people who experience PTSD think everything is out to get them, right? Or for any human being who's here with us right now in this moment, just take a deep breath through your nose and breathe out. And I want you to tell me the first thing that pops into your mind when we look at how have you been hurt. So I'm going to ask you this question. Here's the prompt. Who has hurt you, or how have you been hurt in your life? Take a deep breath. Okay, so for me, it was my father, right? I guarantee you, everyone, you've got your own person who's hurt you. Now, that holds a charge. And by holding a charge, I mean it brings a constrictive energy, or it brings a lack of breath to your nervous system. When you're happy, when everything's going well, you can sit on a shore in Malibu and just go, and everything's good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But relaxation means that you're breathing in a continuous way where you're truly relaxed. But if you have trauma that is stored in your physical body or in your brain, because trauma is two-way, right? Afferent and efferent messages that go back and forth between the musculature and our motor neurons and the brain. So we have like physical trauma that's stored, like phantom limb syndrome, when a warrior comes back from war and he's lost his arm. The brain doesn't know that. That's one physical way trauma is stored. And then there's another way where it's stored. Actually, there's three ways. There's another way where it's stored just in our subconscious because of memories. And then there's another way it's stored because if you look at Mark Wolyn's work, he wrote a book called It Didn't Start With You. If you look at epigenetic science in any way, epigenetics state that there are certain genotypes that are turned off and on, and that give us proclivity to either have cancer, have obesity, or have depression and anxiety. It's all the same. The body and the mind are the same. So really what I'm getting at here is when we are looking at what comes up in the body through breath work and what makes these traumas have such a squeeze hold on our breath, anything that is trauma is a memory or an experience that has not been let go of or processed or come to terms with. And so if that trauma on either a subconscious or a physical sense memory mechanism is putting us even 1% or even 0.5% into the sympathetic side of that nervous system, when we're in sympathetic, we're ready for war. When we're in sympathetic, we're ready to sprint. When we're in sympathetic, we're not breathing, we're not relaxed. And so all of these traumas, whether they're capital T or lowercase t, they shift us over to having less breath. And when we have less breath over time, this is called chronic stress. Chronic stress means that you are always breathing up, you are never breathing out. And that is the role that the capital T and the lowercase t play in involving our breathing patterns. A lot of us learn this, by the way, from our mom and dad. We see our mom and dad breathing up in fear. We don't see our mom and dad breathing out in parasympathetic. And so we subconsciously learn from our parents because, the archetype of a parent is do what I say, not what I do, but we always watch what they do. And we don't really like to do what they say. So that's how breathing gets cued. And of course, there's a lot more there. That's just a super high level of the trauma that's stored and how it blocks our breathing. But it really comes down to physiology. Energy and motion cannot be created or destroyed. Look at Einstein's work. This is a very scientific concept. It's very scientific. But science can't always explain spirituality. And that's why breath sits between science and spirit.
So back to the physical reality of it, I think that's what's going on with my tense neck. And so I notice I breathe shallow. I notice sometimes I'm not breathing. I'm doing work and I'm tense. and I'm not breathing, shallow breaths, or I'm like even holding my breath, and then I will have physical manifestations. Or when I talked about I'm driving and my neck hurts, I'm probably not breathing, and so is that like the physical manifestation, like tight neck?
Yes.
Of not breathing.
One of, yeah, but there can be, and I'll list a few. There can be so many manifestations of a lack of breath. So think about what happens for people that are CrossFit or athletes, or people that are very posture minded. When you have upper cross syndrome, which is where you have a kyphotic T-spine, so it essentially just means that your shoulders are shifted forward, you have a bubble on your back, and you have forward head posture. This is what makes upper cross syndrome happen. And I would see this all the time when I would work with clients. I'm like, oh my God, like what happened to these people? They are just, their shoulders are forward, they have a bubble on their back, and their neck is forward. They're just rolled in. Yeah. Well, the reason they're doing that is because they're trying to brace the stress they're carrying. Just let that land for a minute. Like, that's what's really going on. People's posture is a clear manifestation. There's a physical manifestation or representation of what is going on inside of someone's heart, mind, and soul. Your posture reflects how you feel about yourself. That's why Jordan Peterson says, stand up straight with your shoulders back. Because when you do that, you're a lobster that's less likely to be eaten or abused. So the reason why people carry themselves like this is because they're carrying a lot. And so they don't deserve judgment. They deserve compassion for the load that they're carrying. That's what breaks my heart about the world right now. So how do we
reverse that? Yeah.
How do you solve this?
Yeah.
What do we do about this load that people are carrying? Well, first of all, we give them more breath to carry it. We give people more breath to carry the load they're carrying so they can actually carry it. And the way that we do that, with a lot of clients, what I'll do is I'll have them lay down on a foam roller so it's straight on their spine. And I'll have them do some 360 circles to stretch out their pec minor and their pec major. We'll have them do some sideline work where they do a clock tower on the side where they're having their fingernails go on the ground and they'll stretch with their hip turned to one side and just literally open up the neck, open up the chest. Then I'll have them do their breathing technique on the ground like you and I did before we podcasted. And I'll check their breathing pattern and see, okay, are they a reverse breather? Sometimes people can be reverse breathers. When they take a breath in, their stomach goes in.
I think that's what I do, yeah.
You're more of a chest breather.
But I bring it up like that.
So that's the starting place. And then from there, we'll get their breathing. So we start, with their posture and their breathing technique. And then from there, we'll actually bring them into a session where they can breathe properly. Because guess what, Brian, if people are not breathing in the right technique, or if they have an improper pattern, or if they have a physical postural limitation that is making them not breathe and get in as much oxygen as possible, then they are literally and figuratively not going to modulate their stress. They just don't have the tool set. And what do you do with any animal in nature when it's been compromised? The strong eat the weak. So I'm sorry to drop that bomb on us here, but if you're not breathing properly, you are going to become weaker than everyone else. And someone strong will come along and eat you in some way.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it's just like having poor nutrition. If you're just constantly not getting enough nutrients, you might not notice it, but it's like it's just wearing you down, and you're getting weaker. And
I've never thought of it like that. Yeah. Poor breathing is like junk
standard
food.
American diet. Yeah.
It's like junk food breathing. So we're all doing junk food breathing, which is like no one knows how to do a full diaphragmatic breath. And then because of that, we get a lot of carbon dioxide issues, by the way, because, the cilia, the villi in the lungs, is made so that it's expanding and collapsing, and the lungs and the diaphragm work in harmony. So if I, first of all, am not activating the diaphragm properly, and I have a physical limitation that's blocking that, I could try to breathe as much as I could, but I'm not going to actually allow the air to get in. And then I'm definitely not going to be able to expel as much carbon dioxide. So less oxygen coming in, less carbon dioxide going out, that's what's going to bring you over time carbon dioxide poisoning. And I don't want to like scare people. It's not like your carbon monoxide detector is going to go off in your house or something. But truly, when you open up the front panel, when you start activating the posterior chain, when you pull your head back and stand tall with your shoulders back, and you start breathing on the foam roller and breathing on the ground and going through a lot of these techniques, man, you feel so much better. And the reason why human beings feel better when they breathe properly is because the breath has a psychosomatic impact on trauma and stress. So it's science and it's spirit, man. I know I said that before.
No, I love it. You got to repeat it. And I'm just thinking back to I catch myself. So do you have tips for people to, how do you remind yourself to do it? Because I'm like, I get into this mode of like, especially when you're working, people are watching, you hunch. It's like the shoulders do go, your neck, it's the technology, it's typing on the computer. Everything is that. So how do you catch yourself and do this? Do you have like a timer, like every hour, every 20 minutes, I'm going to stand up, I'm going to do this? Like, what do you do?
Yeah. So we're here in the studio, and the studio is also where I do a lot of recording on the computer as well. So you can see right there on the ground, I have a wobble board. And so I stand on the wobble board when I'm at the standing desk. And I also sit with a chair. I have a lotus chair where I sit in a lotus position, which allows me to sit with my shoulders back, and it allows me to sit with my hips below my waist. And that's a really big key for breathing, by the way. Like, for example, I'm pulling my knees to my chest for y'all that can't see. Try to take a deep breath with your knees into your stomach. It ain't going to happen. Yeah. So the minute I can sit with my kneecap at or below my hip, I'm opening up room for my front panel to breathe. So a lot of times when people do like these breathing exercises and I see their knees way above their hips, the first thing I say is like, why don't you sit properly? Get your knees at or below your hips so your abdominals have room to travel. That's a really big one. So you asked me how I cue myself to breathe when I'm feeling the stress or when I'm in that posture. Well, first of all, I create an environment in my workstation that is like, I'm in good posture. I'm in good posture. I'm on the board, so I have a little proprioception, or I'm sitting in the lotus chair for an hour. And that's the thing. If you're sitting for more than an hour, you have to get up. You absolutely have to get up. You cannot sit for more than an hour straight.
You can't do anything for more than an hour. I think even just standing, and then I'm like, wait, my lower back really hurts just from stand. Like, you got to just move. We never did that throughout history. Just stay in one place.
Never. Yeah. Now, if you're, I will say, if you're laying on the ground, that's a good one too. Like sometimes, I'll do 4 or 5 positions. I'll stand, I'll sit lotus, I'll lay on the ground side lying, I'll lay on the ground prone and get the laptop and sit with prone.
I've got a thing. I got a little desk for that. And I even have my foam roller because I'm trying to open up my back because I am doing that thing. So
we all are.
I lay against, everyone is. In modern world, we're all creeping over. And
yep.
It's this. Is that a supination? It's like pronation and supination, something like that.
Supination is like a bull. Pronation's like when you pour. So if my foot is supinated, it means my foot is pouring soup going in, and if I'm pronated, it means my foot is pouring out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we're all kind of supinated.
We're all like that. Yeah. So so I like that. The lying down is something I just added, and I put the foam roller the other way. I do both ways, the vertical way and the horizontal. So that it forces my back to open up.
Look, the number one thing that I do when someone comes here to do work is I'll have them do sauna, and we'll do all the things I shared with you in the sauna. So they're getting like all the heat shock proteins. We're having them breathe on their back. I'm cueing them out of their reverse breathing pattern. Then I'll put them in the cold, in the ice bath. And that's where you really know if you're breathing properly or not, because you're freezing. You know? And then from there, we'll go back in the sauna, quick shower. We'll come into the office, and there'll be a healing mat. I use a higher dose mat. And the higher dose mat has PEMF technology, which is phenomenal. I don't know if you've talked about this on the show before, but pulsed electronic magnetic frequency. It's really good for mitochondrial activity. So we'll lay them on the ground, and then I'll put an eye cover on them, and then we'll go through a cathartic breathwork journey. And in that catharsis, I've had people scream, I've had people yell, I've had people cry, I've had people remember things from childhood. I mean, it's very, very potent. It's very, very visceral. It's a visceral experience. And I'm sorry if I'm going on like a cul-de-sac here, because I forgot your initial question.
Oh, we were just talking about different positions, or we're even talking about what you do here.
Right. How to get myself out of the stuck state.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm noticing I have tension or all these things, where the conversation went was really, you have to have movement to have something change. So if I have movement of my body or movement of my breath, well, then I'm going to change my uncomfortable posture, or I'm going to change the course of my life. So if I'm breathing in a beautiful way with good posture, good breathing mechanics, nice patterning, and I set an intention to that, I mean, the road is very, very powerful that you're walking, because then you can show up in parasympathetic, in more rest and digest. You can show up more loving. You can show up in flow state. Flow state only exists when it only exists when your breathing is proper. So for any athlete or any CEO or anybody that wants to be in flow state, you have to learn how to breathe from your stomach and really breathe into your kidneys. You have to learn that breath is 360. It's like a circle. So that's a really big answer to your question, which was, how do I shift my state? Well, first of all, you do it by designing your environment so that it's adaptive, so that it's giving you lots of different choices and tools to move your state. If you're just stuck into a cubicle, like I really feel for people that are in cubicles, you have to make sure your cubicle is just the most posture-rich place. Sit, stand, desk, feet rollers, wobble board. I mean, get it all and consistently move throughout the day.
Yeah, change it up. Yeah, that's good. Okay, well, no, I do want to go down the breathwork more and the different programs or different styles, or because what we did with the Sapien Tribe was we laid down and we were guided through it, and we did all these different holds and different lengths. So far we've just been talking about basics of just like how to breathe. But I don't know if people know the places you can go with breathwork, because I felt like I was on psychedelics when I did this, and people reported different things, and like you said, people cry, people bring up the past.
Yeah.
So what are these other like actual programs or modalities?
The way we experience breath happens in a lens of 3. And it's awesome because if you look at the Fibonacci sequence, it's the same thing. It's these multiples of 3, beginning, middle, end. You know, everything in life I feel like that's potent happens in 3s. Do you ever feel like that? Like,
oh yeah,
like
it's a rule of 3s. I mean, it comes up a lot, even in
so much
in writing the film. Like you use a rule of 3s as a classic thing. It's like you don't have 2, you don't have 4. You know,
3.
Yeah.
Beginning, middle, end, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to the breath, I really I put myself to task on this, and when I created the Breath and Wellness program, it was 2019, 2020 when I made it, and I just kept pouring over research, and I was like, okay, what is the real way to describe breath work in its essence? And it is acute, meditative, and cathartic. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
We can only do 3 things in breath, by the way, which is another rule of thirds that I just in real time am learning right now. We can inhale, we can exhale, and we can hold. That's it. That's all you do in breath. Well, the acute is when we're stressed, we're argumentative, we're angry. Let's say we're in a fight, somebody cuts us off in traffic. We are about to go on a stage and we're nervous, right? Acute style breath work. And we have like a lot, I would say we have the most amount of practices in the Breathe program for this, because whether it's panic attack, whether it's relational stress, whether it's stage fright, there's specific breathing practices that allow people to deal with acute stress. Acute meaning singular, it's momentary. And then that's the first phase of breath work that I think a lot of people need to master first, right? That's where you're going to get the most back from your investment, is acute style breath work. Then there's the meditative breath work. Meditative breath work is like where over time you train yourself, much like if you were meditating, you would eventually get better at meditating. But the core difference, man, when you're meditating, the whole process of meditation is just to be with what is. You're not actually consciously doing anything. You're consciously letting go. But when you're breathing and you're doing meditation breath work, you're consciously there and you're unconsciously experiencing all the things that are coming up for you. But with breath work, you're pulling that lever. You're consciously controlling your respiration and you're focused on your breath. And it becomes a meditative practice because we'll stick into the meditative practice what's called breath hold retentions. And this is the ultimate power of breath work, really, because you start to, over time, increase your capacity for the length of time you can hold. So you and I did 20 breaths before we recorded the podcast, and they were just mouth breaths. Then we did 2 rounds of box breath, and then we did 2 15-second holds. Well, over the course of time, when you train yourself to do longer breath hold retentions, you get less oxidative stress for your organs. You get a higher capacity to deal with stress itself, because if you look at the science of stress, stress is where the system is under tension, and stress isn't always bad, but you actually put yourself into a slight eustress when you do breath hold retention. Because if I'm holding my breath after I've done some priming breaths for 30, 60, 90, maybe even 120 seconds, there's going to be a physiological response for your body to breathe. In other words, your physicality is going to be screaming, "I need you to breathe, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to take a breath."
Mm-hmm.
But your mind and your body, and really your soul, when you're doing breath hold retentions, you're being at peace with that stress response. And this is the magic of breath hold retentions. And really, I think at the core of breath work that most people forget. And that is, yes, you can do your priming breath, you can do your box, you can do your circular. But the real magic of breath work is when you learn how to do breath hold retentions over time, and you slowly increase your capacity for time on those retentions. Because then you're going to start to really whittle down the afferent, efferent neurons that are connected to your amygdala that are saying whenever you experience any stress, it's time for you to yell. Whenever you experience any stress, it's time for you to blame your partner. Whenever you experience any stress, it's time for you to scream and shout or do whatever it is. Instead, you can become more wise from breath work and doing these retentions, because over time you can train yourself to be in the stress, much like you would in a cold tank or, in a stream. We train ourselves for this meditative breath with the breath hold retentions over time. And then the final one is catharsis. And this doesn't need too much explanation. It is the modality of breathing where you're doing a long 60 to 90 minute, maybe even for some breathwork practices more. This is where you're doing a lot of hypoxic training, intermittent hypoxia training in there, where you're getting clam hands and tetany. Your mouth might close, your hands might clam. It's because your blood oxygen content is going down. And so what happens is this squeezes the tissues harder, much like when you're in a cold tank. And you start having a lot of memories come up because, as we talked about, those memories are stored. So the physicality of what you're experiencing comes out emotionally. So those are the 3 phases of the breath. And I think that's what most people tend to get wrong, is they think it's just one thing, but it's actually 3 big things.
Man, I wonder. Yeah, I guess we did a lot of holds. When we're doing the holds, that's when you feel the most, like out there. And yeah. Well, tell us more. Like what? Yeah. How do people use them? So,
sure.
Well, for one thing, it sounds like it's kind of like you're acclimating yourself to handle stress. Or it's like I was thinking of heat when you were saying it. When I got to Texas, I had to get used to the heat. My dog had to get used to the heat. But then once you get used to it, and then you're ready for it.
Sure.
Is that what this is helping you in a stressful situation? If you do the work, you are ready.
Think of it. Let's look at breath work through a different lens, because I think this might make a lot of sense to people. So if you look at, in psychology, there's a term called systematic desensitization. And in systematic desensitization, which is kind of a cool tongue twister, you can say that like 20 times fast. Systematic desensitization. So what it's a system of time where you have a variable, and the variable is yourself, and the second variable is whatever you're scared of or whatever is causing you stress or pain. And you create a timeline of that. And so you say, okay, I'm going to systematize the way that I'm desensitizing my intensity of fear or my intensity of stress. It's really just actually fear. It's fear. So what happens is maybe the first time you do breath work, you start with a 3-minute practice and it's a little weird. Like even when you and I did the practice today, you said to me, you're like, I feel a little dizzy for a second, you know, and that's okay because your body is always creating different neuroplasticity, right? And when I say body, I mean your brain. It's the same thing. So the neuroplasticity that's being created is designed to keep you safe. So when your brain experiences breath work, it's going to immediately first say, this isn't safe, or, whoa, I feel weird, or this isn't normal, or, hey, this is different, right? Because the brain's job is to keep you safe and to transfer and receive information. So what happens is the first 3-minute, the first 7-minute, the first 10-minute breath practice you do, you're going to have to get through that desensitization first. And this is why I have a core training plan that I take the clients through in the Breathe program, because in the first week, you're literally just learning. You're just taking it in. In the second week, you start to integrate it. You start to notice, you know, and we could say this from a scientific perspective, you start to notice neuroplasticity. You just notice it. Because the things that scared you in the first week, they don't scare you so much anymore. And then by the third week, you're achieving more mastery because you've done this for 2 weeks now. And in the third week of you doing this, there's long-term changes that are happening in your system because you have been courageous enough to continue your practice. And so in that third week, what you're really getting is you're getting some natural hormesis, you're getting some natural adaptation to what's going on with the breath. And it's bringing you to a place where I think really what this is all about is it's getting you to a place where you can trust yourself more. You can trust yourself more to deal with the stress that you're experiencing. And this is the key. It's making you more adaptive and more resilient to stress. Because when stress happens, you might choose to rather than right? There's a difference between that. Like you and I, like for example, if we were outside and we saw a car crash, our initial response might be to be like, oh my God, are they okay? And then right after that, we would have to choose to breathe. Otherwise, we would get swept away from the stress. But human relationships and our biology is designed in a very ancient way, as you know, right? That's what Sapiens all about, is like respecting the beast that we are, but we're half beast, half spirit. So this evolution of breath, and really what I'm describing to you from the lens of systematic desensitization, our ancestors just called it hunting, or our ancestors just called it foraging, or our ancestors just called it combat. But they weren't as evolved as we are, right? And we could argue about this. I think in some ways our ancestors painted a beautiful picture of how we should live from a physical movement and breath standpoint. But I think from a lens of consciousness and from a lens of true understanding, I think that they would be proud of us, right? In some ways, because we're able to see things in a more conscious way. If we're conscious, if we're not conscious, then you end up with what we just experienced the last 2 years.
Yeah, the last 2 years were crazy. So, speaking of the ancestors, maybe I talked about psychedelics, as it felt like I was on psychedelics. And I've heard people say that you don't need psychedelics if you can meditate or if you're good enough at breath work.
Yeah.
But what about psychedelics? Do you think our ancestors did psychedelics? How do you think that fits into the picture? Do you need them? Do you enjoy them? I have a lot of questions about.
Have you ever experienced psychedelics?
I have.
Okay.
Yes, I've had some journeys, and they're very powerful. And I think we did. I'll answer first. Is I think our ancestors had a lot of journeys. We had mushrooms sitting around. Why not?
There is the stoned ape theory, by the way.
And
if you look at the Amanita muscaria mushroom, there's even some thoughts. There's a book in here from Taro, who made Four Sigmatic, and he has a book called Santa Sold Shrooms, and people believe that the Amanita muscaria mushroom was really what fueled Santa Claus. So there's like a lot of myth and a lot of legend around psychedelics, but if you look back as far as recorded history can show. And of course, even the recorded history is probably not far enough. Or maybe you could argue that the recorded history has been changed or deleted. But I think if we intuitively feel enough back into the mystery of humanity, and if we look at the earliest written form, there has always been some evidence of entheogenic discovery of psychedelics. They found residue in pots from, I think 7,000 years ago. I could be wrong on the number, but I think it's like way further back than we thought. Recently, this just happened. So I think that these compounds exist for us to, and this is the key, consciously explore the unconscious. So we're using a tool found here in the conscious world, in the 3D world. And when we access that tool, it brings us connection to the unconscious, or to the etheric, the ethereal. And I think because of that, it deserves so much respect and so much safety. And quite frankly, that is not what's happening in our world. Of course it is in some areas. But
mostly it's recreational, like little party.
But as you know, here in Austin, it's like everybody's going to a ceremony every weekend. And I'm like, let's be honest with yourself. You just want to go get high. You're not really interested in going to a ceremony. You actually just want to get high. So there's a key difference between ceremony and getting high, or conscious exploration, using a conscious tool of exploration for the unconscious, right? So a really good resource for this that I quote all the time is Jamie Wheel's hedonic calendaring system. And he and Stephen Kotler talk about this in Stealing Fire. And it's, you do your microdosing, you do 4 days on, 3 days off. And then you do once per quarter, you do a journey, like an adequate journey. And that's not for me to say as far as dosage. I can do an adequate journey on 1 or 2 grams of psilocybin. I don't need more than that. And I can go way far out because my system is really sensitive. And then once a year, you do a heroic journey. You go very big once a year, and you do it in a safe space. You do all 3 of these in a safe space. And by the way, I'm not condoning that anyone does this. I'm not sitting here on your podcast and saying that people need to do psychedelics. That is not what I'm saying. Because we have to be careful of unearned wisdom. You have to be really cautious of unearned wisdom. So if you go into a space, and in that space there's a bunch of wisdom that you're not ready to receive, or you're not ready to integrate, it could be like, here's your soul, here's psychedelics as a hammer, boom, and it'll just crack your window. And then when you come back here to the 3D world, you're looking at life through a cracked lens because you weren't ready to receive the wisdom that was being given to you. And I know that from personal experience. 2019, I had a psychic break from too much ayahuasca. And that psychic break took me 2 years to recover from. Thankfully, I had a medicine man, spirit guide, mentor, Paul Check, that showed me how to clear these entities, these energies. I also was foolish, and I did a ceremony with 70 people, which looking back, of course, that wasn't smart, but yet that business still remains. In Costa Rica, they still do that with all these people. And so I made some poor choices, and also the come from. My come from to go into the ceremony was not a pure come from. My come from was, well, if I can just get some wisdom from the ayahuasca, oh, ayahuasca, can you just give me the wisdom? Then I'll be okay. And that's actually the wrong energy. It's the wrong space to do any kind of medicine or any kind of psychedelics. I think for all of us, we need to go into a ceremony with beautiful levels of respect and also an honoring of the mystery. You can have an intention like Mother Ayahuasca or God or Spirit, or I would really love guidance on this issue. Please give me guidance on this issue. Thank you. But not, oh my God, you have to help me. I'm going to die without you. I mean, you can't disempower yourself before you go into a ceremony, because if you do that, look the fuck out. I mean, there's going to be all kinds of things that love that energy, all kinds of energies from other people and all kinds of energies in general that love to take advantage of souls who are disempowered. So that's a very etheric concept. I don't know if you've ever talked about that on your show before.
No, this is time. It's time to talk about it. You know, this is the whole other side. And I think, like we said, humans have always done this. They had rites of passage ceremonies. They had all kinds of stuff. Every culture I've heard of has some sort of, I mean, I'm not saying they all use psychedelics, but they all have sort of ceremonies that This is really cool. I'm so stoked we're talking about this. I remember reading in King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, there was a story about an Indian chief, and in the tribe, his daughter was growing up, and there happened to be an orphaned white boy, Caucasian, that lived in the tribe. And so the chief noticed that the young white boy was kind to his daughter. He was attracted to his daughter. And one day when the kid, I think, was 13 or 14,
maybe 16, whatever age that tribe chose for that kid to be a man. They grabbed him in the middle of the night. They put him on an anthill. The ants ate his body until he barely could pass out. And then just at the point of death, they grabbed him and threw him in the river and washed off all the ants. And as the sun was rising, the chief came to the boy and he said, well, now you can be with my daughter because now I know you're a man. So there was that rite of passage that he experienced. And I think we don't have to go that far. I've done a vision quest before last year, which was very intense. 4 days of fasting with just water, no fire, no tent, no knife, nothing. Just you and water and nature.
Wow.
I'm doing it again in March. And so we can have very, very transformational experiences through the vehicle of altered state. Altered state just means you and I aren't comfy with our nice clothes and the nice house with the warmth, you know. Giving ourselves altered states of being can bring very unique wisdom because it's the things that we can't see because of the comfort that we're in. We have to be really uncomfortable and be altered in our state. And it could be float tank, cold tank, could be ceremony with entheogens. It could be marathons. It could be intense hikes. I mean, there's so many ways to get to altered states. It doesn't always have to be with psychedelics. My favorite way, Brian, to get to an altered state is through the breath. It is my go-to. It is my number one.
Do it anywhere.
Anywhere, but for the people like me who go to these altered states to get wise, to get wisdom, I really think that we start to have this synergy stack where I can pair cannabinoids with breath, or safe vape, or CBD, or microdose with breath. Breath is the anchor. Breath is what we're doing, but it's really, really powerful to do synergy stacks on top of that because you can experience higher states of consciousness or altered states of consciousness. But the last thing I'll say is that we don't want to just go into a ceremony and just like blindly jump in there. You would never send an astronaut into outer space with no training.
Yeah.
Right? They train for a long time to go there. And so I think that's the same level of respect that unfortunately people are not giving to psychedelics.
Yeah. And yes, we're not advocating anyone to do them. There's other ways to get to these spaces without using them.
Yeah.
But I think part of the rite of passage and all this stuff, thinking about the ancestral stuff a little more, it's about not being comfortable once in a while. I think, I guess I'm just thinking about modern society. We talked a lot about what's wrong with the world in the last podcast we did, and everything's easy, fast, cheap, convenient, and that's where all our problems come from. And I think part of our problems is we're too comfortable. It's not like a new idea. You know, a lot of people talk about this, but I think sometimes you can fall into a trap of being comfortable for weeks at a time and realize, or maybe I'm just talking about myself, and I realize, oh, I'm in a bit of a funk here. I think I've been too comfortable for too long, and that you need to shake it up. Like, I don't know if I'm ready to go into the woods for 4 days with nothing, but I'm just saying. And then when do you feel the best? When I go home to Hawaii and we did like an 8-hour hike, and it was very intense and we didn't have enough water, and like it was this whole ordeal, and you feel amazing. It's like you got to shake up your system. You can't just sit there and be comfortable in the air conditioning the whole time.
Yes. Because we get something from that I think from an intellectual standpoint, we love to explain and go, oh yeah, that's hormesis, that's eustress, that's positive stress for the system, that's creating more mitochondrial density. It's like we love to do that.
Yeah.
But really what it is we're just honoring the fact that life has peaks and valleys, and if you spend all your time in the valley, when a peak comes, you are not going to have the strength to climb it because you have spent so much time in the valley. We have to have yin yang. The snake eats its tail for a reason. We have the opposites for a reason. You wouldn't know true happiness unless you had experienced true sadness. You just wouldn't know it. It wouldn't be able to be something that you feel that's experienced. So it's really beautiful to talk about this because I think the breath gives us access to, like I talked about, the EI2, the inventory, because we really feel what's going on in our heart. We notice what the chatter of the mind is, And then we ask our soul for some guidance here. And that term soul, dude, the term soul is the most misappropriated, abused term out there. I don't really think that words can give the soul a definition. Mm-hmm. I don't. Mm-hmm. I think to really be in communion with your soul, there's no words that you could do to describe it. And if you tried to describe it, you might say something like, it's that part of me that I've felt ever since I was born. Mm-hmm. That's what your soul is. And science can't quantify the soul. Mm-hmm. The soul cannot be quantified. It's impossible.
Yeah. So, okay, people need to shake it up. People need to not have this easy life. There's different modalities. You have a lot of them here, actually. You have a great little like man cave type thing going on. So we talked about breath work. We talked about hike. We talked about spiritual journeys. What are the other ones? Sauna and cold are two more that you have.
I got to tell you, my favorite thing, because my time is very full, I've chosen to fill my time with, a son and Carrie Michelle, my partner, and my friends and my studio, and my time is very full. Yeah. So I like to do, and I hadn't heard anyone else describe it like this, so I just made it up a couple months ago. I'm like, I need to do things that are synergy together. I need to synergy stack. I need to take things that are synergistic that help each other achieve a desired result, and I want to stack those things more often. So I might do like some transcriptions, some different microdosing, or I might do all kinds of tools, and then pair that with something that I want to get a desired result for. So a good example might be I'll take some CBD and I'll do my breath work because I want to have deep relaxation or deep creativity. So that's a really good one. I'll do some nasal spray that has oxytocin and hape in it, and then I'll do my breath work right afterwards because I really want to relax completely. I want to ground into the earth. Maybe I've had a day where I'm super heady or I've been stressed out all day. So I'll stack that together. Or maybe I'll go do breath work in the sauna because I really feel like I need to heat my body. My body feels cold. I feel like I need more fire in my life. And then the big one for me for emotional release is if I have a fight, or if I get upset, or if I'm really stressed and I need to release energy, of course you could go and lift a barbell or do whatever you want to do. But for me, the most potent is I grab a pillow, I go into the cold tank, and I do it for 3 minutes, and I'll do 5 or 6 rolling breaths. And then when I feel the energy come up of sadness, anger, or grief, I will scream it into that pillow, like full blast, like, in the pillow. It's a good thing I have a garage too, because my neighbors would be like, what is wrong with this guy? Yeah. But that's a way where I can, healthily express my anger, my sadness, my grief. It's a really good one. And I think when we start involving temperature or physical touch with breath work, those are the most powerful things. You could take temperature or physical touch in lots of different ways and synergy stack that with breath work, and you're going to get immediate results, and they're pretty much always guaranteed as long as you're doing it the right way.
This is great. A lot of tools. So you have a program. Yeah. Where can people find more tools, find out your stuff?
Well, first of all, they can do what we just did on your show, which was the 6 deep breaths, and that's free. So you don't need you don't have to pay for that. And I will say, like, the reason that I created the program was because of the trauma that I've experienced in my life, and also the trauma that I experienced from plant medicine. And so this program, the Breathe, Breath, and Wellness program, it was built from what I experienced myself, and I know that everyone else experiences too. And so the program was built for somebody who's dealing with anxiety or depression, period, end of story. So if someone is dealing with depression, which is rumination on the past, or if someone is experiencing anxiety, which is a fear or a focus on the future, breath work will bring you here and now, right now. And especially if you learn how to do the 3 compartments we talked about, which is the acute style, the meditative, and the cathartic, these are all interwoven, the education and the practical tools in this program. And it's at breathwork.io. So breathwork.io is the place where everyone can go from the Peak Human podcast. And all you have to do is use the code SAPIEN. It's SAPIEN for 20% off of the program. And what I can guarantee that people will receive is an authentic journey that I've been through that produced results for me, and that have produced results for thousands of people across the world. Like literally in all these different countries, people are writing in that they have received a relief through their breath from the anxiety and from the depression. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm a man who dealt with his own struggles and have learned how to unwind and be more adaptive to those struggles. And so that's why I built the program. So yeah, I'm super stoked to have people come and visit. And if it's a fit for you, and when I say fit, I mean, if you're tired of being squeezed by anxiety and depression, the code is SAPIEN for 20% off.
That's great. And we did come full circle. So I guess you kind of did wrap it back around. But yeah, if you could just say a few more words about your experience, because you talked about the trauma in your past and how you've kind of healed from that. And yeah, what modalities you've used, apparently breath work, but what has been your journey?
Well, that's another podcast. but the smaller version of a bigger story is that, like I talked about in the beginning, with having a mom with her own mental disease, disorder. I hate to even call it a disease, because really what I think of it is it's a coping strategy. I think we all have coping strategies in life. And so she did the best she could with her coping strategy. And, you know, what happened for me was I really did not have a anchor or a home base to feel at peace in my body, or to even know what peace was. And it wasn't until I overreached for too much plant medicine, got my ass kicked in a ceremony, that I really started to understand what breath was for me. And what breath is for me is se posso respirare, posso scegliere. And then in Italian, that means if I can breathe, I can choose. So if I can remember to breathe, if I can consciously train myself to breathe, then I'm going to show up more loving for my family and friends. I'm going to show up more present on your podcast. But that wasn't always the case for me. And even at times, I'm still challenged by it. So I'm a student of my own teaching too. But my journey was really like having a lot of addiction with pornography, because I needed the breath and I didn't know how to access it in my 20s. A lot of unconscious sex with women because I was looking for the breath. I mean, all of my anxiety and depression was me just looking for the breath. That was it. So the whole reason that in 2018 actually, I traveled to Thailand and I did breathwork training for a month on an island called Koh Phangan. And then I went to Sedona, and then I went to Costa Rica, and I've been to a lot of places, and I've experienced a lot of teachings from people. And the one thing that I felt was missing from all of these practices was it was so hardcore woo-woo. And a lot of them were very not practical for the everyday person. I wanted to reach someone, you know, like my mom, or like anyone who's experiencing depression or anxiety, because a lot of what is taught about depression and anxiety is very symptom focused instead of belief focused, like we talked about earlier with the BTFA loop, and then seeing the higher lens on top of that. So for my journey, like the big radical, I guess you could say, healing points for me, there was always this through line, this connecting line of breath. You know, am I breathing or am I not breathing? Do I have the consciousness to breathe, or am I going to choose to stay unconscious and not breathe? So my journey has been like one lesson after another of, am I remembering to breathe? Because if I'm remembering to breathe, I can choose. And if I'm not remembering to breathe, if I'm not practicing the art and the science of the breath, then I'm going to be more open to energies, people, entities, things that come in and block me from how awesome I am. And I don't say that in some kind of cocky way. I mean, we are truly awesome. We're truly a miracle. the fact that you and I are here and that we get to do what we do, and that all of us that have been through and with this conversation, the fact that we're even here is so amazing. It's so amazing. It's so beautiful. I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah.
And it's easy to have gratitude leave when there's no breath. And when gratitude is gone and curiosity is gone, and in the place of gratitude and curiosity, there's depression and anxiety, without the right person to pull you up, or without this type of breath work that we do in the program to pull you up, it can be really challenging. It can be really challenging out there. And I don't want to placate that. I don't want to belittle that. I know, because I have been there for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing all this and being so open and telling your personal stories. And yeah, I think this is the kind of the icing on the cake. You know, I do all my content on the 4 other things, and now we're finally getting to that 5th thing, which is very human, right? I'm all about sapient. It's all about being human and being in touch with your mental state, emotional, spiritual, all this stuff is super important. And the breath, I mean, that's very human, right? It's very human. It happens. I mean, it's, you breathe every second, right? It's more than the food or the water. It's everything. Yeah.
You know what I was feeling when you said that is I was thinking about the evolutionary lens that I'm sure you talk about on your show a lot and that we all experience. And in this evolutionary lens, I think it's easy to forget about Native Americans. You know, we just go right to like, well, live like a caveman. It's like, well, the Native Americans were here for a long time. And something that the Lakota has always done in their ceremonies and also in their circles is whenever someone would speak, when that person was done speaking, they would all take a breath. So I would finish speaking and then everyone would because it did 2 things. It let the person know you heard them, and it also allowed you to feel, because we've talked about the ego, the heart, and the soul. It allowed you to feel what's going on inside of you so that you can then respond in a way that's most authentic and most true. And I think we all can feel that, what I just said. Like there doesn't need to be a lot of explanation as to why that's true. We all just feel that it's true. And I think that's what's most human. What's most human is what you know to be true without having to explain it. That is the most human thing. That is the most sapient thing we could ever do, is to know something's true and not feel like we need to explain why it is.
Yeah. I think I had a similar thought. I've always thought that what all humans want is just to be seen. Like everything people do is to be seen. It's kind of like what you're saying is to have this mutual feeling. And maybe it's even beyond that. Maybe I'm talking about something a little different, and maybe I'm going off track. But why do people make money? Why do people want to do anything? You just want to be seen.
Yeah. We want to be seen, and we also, to be human, is that we want to express. Whether it's breath or singing or talking or art, whatever, the opposite of expression is depression. So if I'm depressed, I'm either not breathing or I'm not expressing.
Well, we're going to keep going forever here, but let's cut it off. This has been really cool. Thanks for having me over in this great studio, and man, maybe we should hit the sauna.
Let's go in the sauna. Thanks for having me, and thank you for allowing me to share with this community. You know, I had heard about your work. We met at the Rome Ranch event, and it's an honor, man. So I appreciate the time and letting me share with you people.
Good stuff, man.